Speaking of rights, you're also speaking of burdens. So I want you to speak a little bit to the debt burden across generations, the generational debt burden. A child who is in school today, a young man who is in college, and I'll come back to the question of education, about taxation at the college level, a woman who is at home who actually doesn't work but has a higher cost of imposed on her for what she buys for domestic use, and a retired civil servant, for example, a farmer in the countryside, a cobbler on the streets. I want you to speak to this because this is really important for us.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to say it like it's a story.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Right.
So debt can be taken at any time, right? In a country's lifespan. Yes. But we're just going to pick a particular point in time.
Yes.
A woman gets pregnant. She needs to take prenatal supplements.
Yes.
Okay? And 9 months later, if all goes well, the child will be born. And let's assume that when she gets pregnant, that's when a government takes on a loan or a debt.
Yes.
Now, normally debt gets, the interest on debt is paid after about 4 or 5 years, the first payment. So this child that this lady is now pregnant with is going to be born. So that's about 9 months on, 10 months on. Then 4 years later, the repayment cycle is kicking in for debt.
Yes.
So if this is a country that was fairly stable and the debt money came in and some of the money went into the healthcare system, then maybe she will get free checkups. And if she has to have a cesarean section, that's also covered, for example. And then the child is born. And because the child had prenatal vitamins, you have a healthy child born. And perhaps all of this was partially provided for by government through different types of taxes and finances from other sources. And the debt that's taken on is usually for a particular purpose. So maybe we're widening the road network. Maybe we're building a new big hospital or in Argentina. Because Argentina's peso over a year and a half ago was 250. And the last time I checked it, it was 800 pesos to the dollar.
To the dollar.
Yes. Which means that if your salary is the same salary after a year and a half, now your child is 6.5, your packet of milk is 4 times
what it was at birth.
But your salary is the same because it's the currency pushing the items price up and down. It's not the productivity or demand and supply like people like to say. It's because if I want to export, I want dollars. If I have to buy the packaging for the milk, I have to import it. I mean, all of these, every interaction that business will have with an external supplier is going to inflate the price of the domestic product as well. So these are now the things that start happening. So now the child is growing older, they're going to school, but now they will say, we have to pay off the debt, and the teachers cannot get their raise. And if the teachers cannot get their raise, then they will start doing tuitions, for example, after school. And in some countries in the world, it is banned. Or they will have to get another job because they have to make ends meet. So what happens? The quality of your education goes down because your teacher is tired.
Yes.
And then in the evening, they're doing another job so that they can just put food on their tables and still stay in the same house. And if they can't do that, then what you have is a situation where the middle class now moves into the lower classes and start moving into cheaper housing because it's about survival. Now, that human being knows that they cannot live in debt, but the country is living in debt. And I think this is the conversation or the logic that I always find is a struggle. If we as individual human beings know we cannot live in debt, why is it that we think that countries can live in debt for years?
Exactly.
The child is still not even a teenager. Now our child goes to high school, hopefully is healthy, hopefully the schooling system is still there, but we have fewer secondary schools. So for every one child going into high school, maybe 5 or 8 or 10 don't. So you're cutting the ability of a young person to join the workforce as an economically productive person already at 12. So you have despondent people, you have sad children. This is not a good state of affairs. Now you move it forward. Fast forward 8 years, let's assume Everybody who wanted an education got one. We're now in the workforce. Now you're faced by the child who's saying, why should I pay money? Look, 5 of my cousins didn't finish high school. 3 of my friends sit next to the coffee shop outside and have no work. You know, these are now the lived realities of people in developing countries. Now, at the 20-year mark, remember the interest rate was being paid. So as the child hits 15, still interest rate only, hits 20, still interest rates only. But when they hit 25, now you have to pay the full amount. So if you think the currency was already fluctuating and the economy was already unstable when the child was still growing, can you imagine what happens when you're faced as a government or leadership with paying off, I don't know, $20 billion like that? The one thing I haven't talked about is the electoral cycle, because this is not going to be the same government that took the loan. Electoral cycles are 2 5-year cycles or 2 7-year cycles, depending on where you are.
Yes.
So your allegedly democratic country has a situation where the person who took on the debt, the government that survived 5 years without paying interest rates, is
Retired.
not the one who's going to be
In office.
left holding the baby.
Okay.
So, yeah.